This is certainly one of the examples of why you need to think about your committee chairs. So you have assigned me as committee chair for music. I apologize in advance, but when I saw this particular program, this particular song was the only one that I felt was appropriate. So apologies to our presenter today, but this was the one I had to provide from Little Shop of Horrors. Don't be the
When they offer you fortune and fame, love and money and instant acclaim, but whatever they offer you, don't be the best.
They may offer you lots of cheap thrills, fancy condos in Beverly Hills, but whatever they offer you,
Don't be the best. Look out, here comes Audrey too. Look out,
here I come for you. Here I come for you. Here I come for you.
here I come for you. Hold your hand and hang on to your soul. Something's coming to eat the world whole. If we fight it, we still got a chance. But whatever they offer you, though they slop in the trough for you, with whatever they offer you, don't be the best. Not tomorrow. Don't be
Thank you. I'm going to start here. Feed me, Audrey. Feed me. And for our invocation, Tim Carlson, stand please.
Thank you, President John. Our speaker today is going to be talking to us about health and health in a wonderful way to our diet and our own, shall we say, physical management. This has been a challenging year for me, but if you haven't noticed, it's a lot less today than there was probably 6 months ago. And 1 Corinthians in the Christian Bible reminds us, do you not know your bodies are the temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received God? You are not your own. You are bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. It is a challenge that we all have to try to maintain ourselves, at least, and hopefully improve ourselves physically as we go. Diet, physical exercise, the things that in our busy world we tend to forget. So now, if you please bow your heads and join me in invocation of the help of the God of each of us. We thank you for our help and beseech thee to empower us to have discipline and hope to improve our health, specifically to moderate our diets and include health as a main focus. Our Rotary calling always compels us to be healthy mentally and physically to meet the 4-way test. We ask this in the name of the Great Spirit that is your essence. Amen.
Thank you, dear. We have quite a few guests today. Just quickly go through them here. If they're at your table, just kind of do a shout out as I read through. Drew Harris, who is a guest of Mal Arnett, poor Drew. And we have April Crow Rosas, guest of Matt Crow. Brittany Vaughn, guest of Quinn Dolan. Ronnie Haas, guest of Jim Devaney, along with Tim Kovas, also a guest of Jim Devaney. Lucas Field, guest of Carter Field. Pete Glazer, guest of Bunker Frank. Lisa Carter, who's supposed to be here as guest of Amanda Ryder, but I'm not sure she is. Melissa Lambert, she might have been here before. I guess. And Lisa Craig is guest of Jim Howard. Welcome all. And before we go any further, also thanks to NYDC for, since we have moved out to the convention center today, to this wonderful new space. Great building. Thanks to Linda and all the people at YDC for putting making this available. Your lunch today is courtesy of Stacy's Catering. So, another great thing. Since our meeting today is on plant-based lifestyle, it's only appropriate that we are also 2 days ahead of Operation Harvest. We included without placing bags on doorsteps. I've listened to more dogs bark at me than I've done in a long time. They at least have good taste to know who to bark at. But anyway, this Saturday is pickup day. So hopefully you have a route. If you don't have a route and have time, I'm sure Pete and the crew can find a spot for you to come. So, but this is really important. And I was really pleased when I went around and actually saw people that get bags and people say, oh yeah, I'm glad you reminded me. So I think that's a great thing to do. A couple other quick things. One is, I think you probably noticed in the paper this morning, one of the annual events, it's always a big celebration in Yakima, is the Ted Robertson Awards. And this year it's Joe Mann will be the honoree. That's on November 4th. The chamber will be is the host and at the convention center. So if you're interested, certainly get in touch and help honor Joe for his work. Also coming up a week before that is a little thing called Read for the Record. This is the 16th year. It's going on all over the world. And it's an opportunity where you're to buy a book or have a book, the same book that you read to a child. So I'm hoping somebody's going to read one to me. The book is Amy Wu and the Patchwork Dragon. Amy Wu and the Patchwork Dragon, and it's available in Weeklings or any place you can find it. It's not very expensive. But remember, October 28th, read for the record. And again, literacy we know is really important, and one of the things that's going to make this for our youth and for us as well. I'd like to also introduce Sherry Bissell. Last night we had a little event, speaking of dogs, and Sherry will report. Not Sherry wasn't the dog.
Thank you, John. So last night we had our very first refreshments with Rotary and Rover 2, as we affectionately call it, R&R and R. At the Kiln, we had a wonderful turnout. So Austin Beebe and I, we are co-chairs for membership development. So it was a membership development event and a social event as well. I wanted to give you the numbers and thank everybody for coming. We had 15 Rotarians with 4 spouses, 4 guests that included 2 potential new members. We had 13 dogs present and 3 dogs at home that were honored. The pictures on our phone. Because a few of us, including myself, had dogs that a little bit tough to handle. So they were good. But anyway, we had a really, really good time. So thanks to everyone for coming that was there. If you missed it, you missed it. For sure. We had a good time. And we will do something else. We've got a couple of names in our prize hat now. So we will be doing other events soon. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Sherry, and to perhaps recover myself with her. Sherry also saved me last night from one of those dogs who I was holding on to for someone and not paying attention when he saw his best friend across the park. And I in the chairs, except for Sherry, would have followed him across the way. So thank you, and thanks for everybody being there. It really was a fun meeting. As you know, this is National Hispanic Heritage Month, and as we're doing this month, we're having someone from the Hispanic community talk a bit about their family or their place in the valley. And today we have Carmen Mendez.
You know, Sonia called on Tuesday and asked if I could present, and I said to her, I already presented a few years ago about heritage and the struggles and trepidations that my family has gone through to be where we are today. And so today, I chose not to talk about myself or my family, because it's very close to me. And I get super emotional because I'm super passionate and I love my family. But it's also really, I struggle with my ability to share with everybody how I feel about it. And because I've already done it once before, I wanted to share something else today. I wanted to share why we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. And I read a beautiful article on NPR. I know that a lot of you listen to NPR. Hopefully you came across this. But it's called, yes, we're calling it Hispanic Heritage Month. And do we know it makes some of you cringe. As the headline states, here at NPR, we kicked off Hispanic Heritage Month, not Latino Heritage Month, not Latinx Heritage Month, not even a compromise or a combination of the three, Hispanic, Latino, Latinx Heritage Month. To be honest, NPR began to participate in the national event that is called Hispanic Heritage Month with no discussion about existing tensions within Latino communities regarding the use of the word Hispanic, its origins, whether it may be time to swap out the catch-all label of something different. In full transparency, it could have something to do with the fact that as of 2020, only 6% of NPR's newsroom and on-air journalists identifies Hispanic or Latino Heritage Month. And I could probably say the same here with our Rotary Club. I think that we have maybe, I could probably count with one hand the number of Hispanic or Latino Rotarians here in downtown Rotary. But it's not too late to post the following thorny question. What is the harm in lumping together roughly 62 million people with complex identities under a single umbrella? Is it a blanket pan-ethnic term necessary to unite and reflect a shared culture that is still largely excluded from mainstream popular culture? Or a more basic question, ¿por qué Hispanic? Hispanic Heritage Month initially began as a week-long celebration in 1968 under President Lyndon Johnson, who at the time said, "The people of Hispanic descent are the heirs of missionaries, captains, soldiers, farmers who were motivated by a young spirit of adventure and a desire to settle freely in a free land." I agree, but it was also the children of many Native Americans, myself included, that was not originally included as part of this Hispanic. So this heritage is ours to claim. It was until 1988 that President Ronald Reagan extended the week to a full 31 days through October 15, keeping it to September 15 start date, because it coincides with National Independence Day of Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica. Similarly, Mexico celebrates the 16th, Chile on the 18th, and Belize on the 21st. But even before Johnson landed on the term Hispanic, there was a lot of debate within government entities on how to refer to Latinos in the United States. Cristina Mora, a sociologist at the University of California, Berkeley, tells NPR, Mora, who wrote about adoption of the term Hispanic in making Hispanics, how activists, bureaucrats, and media created a new American, found the use of the umbrella categorization and inextricably linked to the U.S. Census as an attempt to identify and quantify different groups of people. The Pew Research Center reports that in the 1930s, Latinos living in the U.S., regardless of their place of birth or family origin, were all noted as Mexicans by door-to-door U.S. Census Bureau counters. It wasn't until 1970 that the agency began asking Latinos living in the U.S. to self-identify as either Mexican, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Central or South Americans, or Spanish, or none of these. This, however, led to a bizarre and unexpected underrepresentation of white Americans who misunderstood the classification. Apparently, hundreds of thousands of confused people living in South and Central regions in the U.S. mistakenly identified as Central or South American. because here in the United States, we have a concept that America is only the United States. But even with the added Latino subgroups, Mora says that in the 1970 census once again resulted in severe undercount of minorities, the growing population, what in turn led to a national backlash from activists, academics, and civic leaders who demanded their representations. New groups were formed to tackle the problem, including the Census Bureau Spanish Origin Advisory Committee and group of Spanish-speaking federal employees called ad hoc committees on racial ethnic definitions. The options being floated at the time included Brown, Latin American, Latino, and Hispanic. One of the problems is that Latinos were seen as foreigners, invaders, and not inherently American. One of the jobs of the advisory board was to really show that Latinos were American minority groups, like African Americans, a minority that stretched from coast to coast and that were patriotic, that fought in wars, that contributed to American history, that built American cities, so that when the term Latin America was used right away, it seemed to strike discord because it seemed too foreign. She adds, Hispanic was never a term that everybody loved, but it was a term that got a lot of support from within Latinos in the Nixon administration and later in the Ford administration. It was eventually added to the 1980 census. Many Latinos had an immediate disdain of the term. We hated the term Hispanic because it was a term that felt it was forced upon us by U.S. government, said Paulo Ortiz. It was a natural fit for everyone that I knew. It wasn't a natural fit for everyone that I knew. I didn't know anyone growing up who said, oh, hey, I'm Hispanic. It was always either I'm Mexican American, Chicano, or Chicano. A large part of that, he says, is based on the origins of the word Hispanic, which in English translation of the Spanish hispano, meaning person whose cultural traditions originate from Spain. When that is the starting point, he says, that immediately erases all of the centuries of pre-Columbian history, culture, and civilization that existed before the European conquest and colonization of the Americas. And that's understandably upset to people who are not white. It alienates indigenous and Afro-Latino communities whose history includes deep resistance to the Spanish invasion and not necessarily tied to Spain. So the recent popularity of the word Latinx in the US represents another alternative for the continuous Hispanic label that represents, its proponents also offer gender inclusivity. Ortiz marvels at the way he has so quickly been adopted by young people, academic institutions, and corporations alike, though it's not without its own critics. Ortiz suggests that one theory of the shift is that is being driven by diverse employee organizations within company. Almost all of them, the ones that have reached out, have taken on the term Latinx. I find this fascinating because the stereotype is that the term Latinx is being foisted upon us by academics, but that's just not true. Beyond the dispute over what the name of the month-long celebration, there is another concern, that in an effort to make a more palatable, commercially viable stories of oppression, prejudice, and injustice are whitewashed or ignored. Too often the focus is on the musical contributions or dancing or the happy art forms. Mario Garcia, professor of Chicano and Chicana Studies at the University of California, Santa Barbara. But we also need programming that reflects historical problems, because you can't assume that Latinos already know about the lynching in South Texas in the 1910s, the Suit riots, the segregation of Mexican kids in school, or the Chicano-led high school walkouts of the 1960s that permanently changed higher education enrollment for Latino students. In this experience, Garcia notes that U.S. public education system does such a poor job of teaching Latino history in this country that often Hispanic Heritage Month is the only opportunity for students to learn more about it. It's a real shame, he says. But approached in the right way, he adds, even these stories can be ultimately seen as happy, because the historic struggle of Chicanos, Mexican Americans, other Latinos are happy stories. because only through those struggles have we been able to achieve more social justice in this country, more education. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. This is a real basis for the study. Now, we have, speaking of Operation Harvest, the Bensburg. This Operation Harvest. No, I'm good. We're talking about Rotary Food Bank. I'm sorry. My mind is going.
That's okay, because we are one of the recipients of Operation Harvest. We depend on this food. Now, the picture that you see up there is the Yakima Food Bank. Let me give you a little history about this, because everybody says, oh, that's our food. This food bank was started in 1971 by two ladies on the east side, black lady and a white lady, and they did it out of the garage, consolidated food and helping feed their neighbors. So we incorporated in 1979, but at this point, we have no truck, no forklift. Everything was done manually. We got a semi in, we lifted everything up. Yeah. We're a member agency of Northwest Harvest, a partner agency of Second Harvest, and we receive food and funding from donations from state, federal, anti-hunger programs. Each week, we feed between 350 and 750 families. And you're going to multiply that, families of 1 to 8 people. One time when I was on the line, we don't ask for ID or anything. We want to know what the family consists of. This specific family had 8 members, 3 unrelated families, ages from 1 year to 87. So these are people that desperately need food. So in probably 2014, Dr. Doug Corcoran wanted to build a canopy so that we could protect some of the people waiting for food from snow and rain. We open our doors at 8:30 every morning, but sometimes people show up at 6:30 because they think the best food comes out early. So what we did was we came to Rotary to remodel, and it went way beyond our wildest dreams. We tore that building down, go to the next slide, and Tri-Ply Construction built a new building. We have the building costs about $328,000. 2/3 of that money came from Rotary. The majority came from the Rotary Trust. And we have other donations from the Community Foundation, United Way Foundation, Pacific Power. So you can see this is what our building looks like. This is a recent picture. This is what we look like when we get ready to open up. So I mentioned we get funding from state and federal. That money is for food only. We can't use that money for anything else. So we get our money from individuals, churches, and businesses that put on bonds. Macy's has done it, Cash and Carry. So the issue is here, I'm up here because of Eric Silvers. And let me explain that further. Rotary's name gives us credibility in the community. We give Rotary recognition with the name on the building and our cup. If the name Rotary hurts us when we're requesting donations and grants, because the general perception is Rotary funds our operation. Rotary funded, we're grateful that we got the forklift. That is another donation that this group. We operate on a shoestring budget, but we incur high expenses. We have a walk-in fridge, walk-in freezer. We failed on this yesterday. We're lucky we got heat refrigerators come down. Otherwise, we would have lost tons of protein. We have a truck, a forklift, and Rotary helped us buy a forklift after it's a used forklift. After the warranty was off, we had hydraulic problems that cost us $2,000. So we're requesting help, both in donations and volunteers who run this desperately needed organization. There are people that won't eat if it isn't for us. If you take a look at this, if you go back to the last slide, this is what it looks like on the outside. This is what we're preparing to open the doors at 8:30. We literally give out tons of food. We're open from 8:30 until 12 on Friday. We saw the lines ahead of us. The boxes that you saw came from the Nava farms. This goes to the market. When we're done, there's not a scrap of food anywhere because there are farmers that come to pick up the food that most of us will not eat. So we'd love to have your help. If you look, my wife is in the pink. The gentleman with his back to you is Greg Stewart, who comes up and helps us when we open on Fridays. There was another picture with a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Keys, who I desperately needed because he and I used to trade shifts and help each other. Jonathan, unfortunately, was that individual who was across the street from Paul Larson, who was shot in the back. He was now we need the money, we need your help at the food bank. On Wednesdays, we get food. A lot of food, Uniform Hospital comes in various forms, we separate it. The food was farmers, the food people with. Thursdays, we bag the food getting ready for Friday, and you see Friday that we have all of this food. If you come down to help us, nobody is allowed in the building who has not been vaccinated. You have to wear a mask and gloves. We try to keep the amount of people in the building to 10 and safely apart on 6 feet. So I want to just remind you, this is your food bank. We desperately need your help, and we appreciate it. So please keep us in mind.
Thank you, Pete. See the need in this community, and that's why food banks like Rotary Food Bank, as well as what we're going to be doing on Saturday, is so important. I think in lieu of giving our speaker adequate time, we're going to go, I'm sorry, Doug, we're going to put your exciting presentation off for another day, okay? All right, and I can introduce Namita, who will introduce our speaker.
Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure and honor and privilege to bring on stage today to have Dr. Yami Lancaster, a dear friend, and so much more amongst us, amongst our Rotary Club today. So welcome, Yami. It's our pleasure to have you. I'm going to introduce tell a few things about you. So, Yami, truly a busy lady with a full plate. You know, mom of 2 boys, a wife, a business owner, and a pediatrician. And I'm going to just talk about all her formal labels here. So, she's a board certified pediatrician, a certified lifestyle medicine pediatrician, National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach, an author, and an international speaker. She's definitely passionate. She's a passionate promoter of healthy lifestyles especially the power of plant-based diets in the prevention of chronic diseases. She owns Nourish Wellness, which is a pediatric micro practice in Yakima, where she lives with her husband and two active sons. Her book is called A Parent's Guide to Intuitive Eating: How to Raise Kids Who Love to Eat Healthy. And finally, she also has a podcast. She hosts the popular podcast Veggie Doctor Radio, which boasts listeners from 96 countries and nearly 500,000 downloads to date, probably more than that. So so I just wanted to say why yummy, why here? Because this plant-based eating has personally changed the life of all of us in our family, and I wanted to bring that forward to all of you all, and who better than Dr. Yami to introduce them. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nobita, and it is such an honor to be here with all of you today. You are definitely admirable in your dedication to service, and I just love hearing everything that you're doing. So, is it sharing, Dr. Nama?
No.
Let's see. Oh, I think it must have disconnected. All our people at home, here we go. This is where I'm at.
Carolyn, are you sharing it?
Okay, here we go. Sorry.
Turn the microphone off on your.
But where is them? Okay. Sorry. All right, here we go. So my presentation, obviously, is about nutrition, which I am very passionate about. And I hope that today you will leave empowered and that you will learn a little bit of something about nutrition. But this is an interactive presentation. If you have a phone with you, if you could pull it out right now, please. Usually you don't want to have your phone out when the speaker is speaking, so thank you all for being gracious. However, it makes the presentation a lot more fun if you participate. So get your camera open and take a picture of the QR code that you see there, and it'll take you directly to a website where you can actually interact with the poll feature, or you can go to Mtg.com and put that long code. But really, if you go to the QR code, it's a lot easier. Okay, so everybody got it? Those of you at home can do the same thing. So just pull your phone out, aim at the QR code with your camera, and it'll open up the web page, and then you will be part of the presentation. During the poll session, if you haven't had time to do this, it'll have another form to join, okay? So let's get started. So here is the grim reality, and this is the reason that I'm here. Currently in the United States, there are 129 million, or over half of American citizens living with at least one preventable chronic disease. And chronic disease is responsible for 7 out of 10 deaths in the US. Our number one killer in the United States is heart disease. Of the top 10 killers in the United States, the majority are preventable causes of death. But what's so ironic is that we are one of the wealthiest and most technologically advanced nations, yet we are dieting more than ever, and we are deriving the least amount of pleasure from our food, and yet we have this high burden of chronic disease, and it's such a shame because we're being ineffective. We're being ineffective with our methods, and we are misdirected. Why should we care about nutrition? Why is such an important question to ask? Because why is going to empower you. You need to find your own why. And when you're able to anchor with your own why, It's going to guide you. It's going to give you the direction that you need to go in order to take the steps to empower you to take your health in your own hands. I want to share my whys with you. Maybe you share the same whys. My first one is because I want to feel good. This is what I describe as well-being. I want to feel good on a daily basis. I want to feel good today. I want to feel good tomorrow. I want to have energy to play with my kids. I want to have energy to serve. I know a lot of you probably agree with that. You want to have energy to serve. I want to have the ability to enjoy this one precious life I have on this planet with my loved ones, with my friends, and with my family. So that's number one. Number two, I want to take a look forward, maybe just a decade or two forward, and I want to do what I can today to decrease my risk of chronic disease, okay? Decrease the risk that I'm going to get a disease that's going to cause me illness and disability in the future that I have control over, that I can prevent. But number three is I want to look at the long game. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I want to live a long life, but I want to live a healthy life. Currently in the United States, on average, American citizens are spending the last 15 years in illness and disability. The last 15 years. Now, if you knew that right now, if you knew that you could change that and instead live a life good until the very end, even if it's not long, would you do that? Or would you choose to take those 15 years of illness and disability? So those are my whys. But now I want to know your why. So here's the first poll. So now you can go to your phone and you get to vote. When you reflect on your life, do you want to live a long, healthy life by cultivating healthy habits? Or do you want to play hard and die young? YOLO, baby. You only die once, right? You only live once. Okay, so I think that everybody agrees with me. Live a long, healthy life. A few of you wild motorcycle riders in here. Who are the motorcycle people? There gotta be a few, right? All right, so there's some YOLOs. But you can interpret YOLOs in a lot of different ways. You only live once, maybe you want to live a long, healthy life, right? So when it comes to chronic disease prevention, what we eat is the most important factor that we can control. And why is that? Because food is ubiquitous. We just ate, right? You're going to eat again in a few hours, and you're going to keep eating day after day after day, multiple times per day. What we put in our bodies affects everything in our bodies. It affects every organ system, including our brain, including our mood. So food is very important, and it is a big factor when it comes to chronic disease prevention. In fact, whenever we look at the risk factors for certain types of cancers, we know that cancers are affected by a lot of different things that we can't control. Things like pollution, things like maybe our exposure to radiation and sunshine. But the single biggest factor when it comes to cancer risk is our diet. So I just want you to know that it is ubiquitous. It is something that we can decide on. The good news is it's more simple than you think. It does not have to be complicated. Just eat more whole plant foods. I promise you it's easier said than done, okay? Don't worry, you don't have to become completely plant-based, but you do have to eat more plants than the average American. And the reason is because the average American is not eating plants. Our current standard American diet is mostly processed foods. In fact, only about 10% of the calories that we eat are coming from whole plant foods. And French fries don't count as whole plant foods. So that is the number one vegetable in the United States, believe it or not, is French fries. So let's go over some definitions. I want to show you all how simple this is so that you understand what kind of choices you can make when you're choosing your foods. So what is a whole food plant-based diet? It's fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, and nuts and seeds in their whole or minimally processed form. This is the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine Power Plate. I'm also a Food for Life instructor, so I've taught cooking classes for a number of years. It's super fun, and I like to keep it simple, but I show this plate to represent the type of food that I want you to pick the majority of the time. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts and seeds in their whole or minimally processed form. So let's review, because maybe you may not know what the difference is between a whole food and a processed food. Let's start with the star of Yakima Valley, the apple. Okay, so everybody recognizes this, right? If you walk somewhere, you walk into a store, you see an apple, but you see an apple tree, you can grab the apple from the apple tree and you can eat it, right? That's a whole food. Okay, so this is an example of a whole food. Nothing is taken away, nothing is added. It is as you would find in nature. That is an intact whole food. This is a minimally processed food. So imagine you take the apple, you chop it up a few times, put it in your Vitamix, I love my Vitamix, and you make applesauce. Still, you don't add anything, you don't take anything away, but you are changing the composition a little bit. Maybe you cooked it, maybe you made it into a flour, but you did not take anything away, you didn't add anything to it. That is minimally processed. Most of the foods we eat in our home, we're doing some processing, right? We're cooking them, chopping them up. That's minimally processed. This is apple juice. This is an example of a moderately processed food. So here you took the apple and you just squeezed the juice out of it. So you did not add the peel and the fiber, lots of the nutrients, all of these things. And so you removed something. Sometimes moderately processed foods may have something added as well, but you're not getting too wild with it. You're taking some stuff away, you're maybe adding a few things, but it's still something you can recognize. It's still something you can make in your own home. Sometimes we moderately process foods in our own home as well. But then you get to ultra processed, okay? So the way that I define ultra processed is you cannot make this in your home. This has to be made in a factory. Not only are you adding things like fat, sugar, artificial ingredients, artificial colors, artificial flavors, you're also taking things away. You're taking away fiber, you're taking away nutrients, you're taking away vitamins. Does anybody know what this is a picture of? Yeah, you guys are good. Apple Jack cereal, which actually does have some apples in it. You see? It's way down on the list of dried apples, apple juice concentrate. Maybe some of that came from Yakima, who knows? But look, you're also getting a bazillion dyes and artificial colors and refined flours and all of that. So this is an ultra processed food. Let's just do a few more examples quickly. Here's corn. Does everybody recognize this one? Maybe you've grown corn before. This is the whole form of corn. Here's an example of minimally processed corn. You're just popping the kernels. That's minimally processed, not too bad. Moderately processed, not too bad either. What you're doing is you're taking the dried corn, you're making it into a flour, you're adding some salt and lime. Not horrible. How about that? This is obviously ultra processed, okay? Even you can tell from looking at the bag, it's so, wild on there, okay? And this is an example of a food that's very commonly eaten by children. It's one of the top favorites, something that brings children into the clinic all the time with chronic abdominal pain. Yeah, it's got corn in there, but it's a refined corn product. They had to add all these vitamins in there. This is called enriched flour. It sounds very wholesome, but enriched means that they had to take things out of the flour to process it so that it has a longer shelf life. Because they take the nutrients out and they don't want Americans to be nutrient deficient, they end up having to add vitamins back in. So that's why you see listed here riboflavin, thiamine, parasulfuric acid. That was actually in the corn. If you would have eaten the corn in the cob, you would have gotten those nutrients. Just want everybody to know what enriched means, right? So unfortunately, and maybe this isn't going to be shocking to you now, but children in our country are currently acquiring 70% of their calories from ultra-processed food. This is hot off the press study. 70%, 70 of their calories from ultra-processed foods. That was the Apple Jacks and that was the Flaming Hot Cheetos. So now you know what whole plant foods are. You can identify the difference between a whole food and a processed food. So why? Here's the other why. Why do we want to eat more whole plant foods? I have two main reasons for you. The first one is my favorite F word, fiber, okay? Fiber, I love fiber. Here's the definition from mayoclinic.org, also known as roughage or bulk. It includes the part of plant foods your body can't digest or absorb, unlike other food components such as fat, proteins, or carbohydrates, which your body breaks down and absorbs. Fiber isn't digested by your body. Instead, it passes relatively intact through your stomach, small intestine, colon, out of your body. It sounds like fiber is not super important. It's just this thing you eat and it just passes through. But I'm here to tell you that fiber is life, fiber gives life, and fiber is incredibly health promoting. Everybody knows you need fiber to go to the bathroom, right? Okay, so you eat fiber, it helps you go poop. You see that on the commercials and those kinds of things. Believe it or not, there's fiber gummies, those exist. Better to get it from food. But besides it providing roughage so you can go to the bathroom, it does so many other important things. Another important thing that it does is it binds to cholesterol and excess hormones and removes them with waste in your body. So that is how fiber, insoluble fiber, helps to decrease your cholesterol level. So that's really important. It helps balance your hormones as well. It also gives you satiety. So fiber mixes with water to create bulk and helps you feel full. So at the end of the day, when you're eating higher fiber foods, you actually end up eating less calories, but you don't feel like you did. You feel satisfied. You feel good. That's not what happens when you eat ultra-processed foods, and there's studies to prove that. But the very most important and the very most exciting thing that fiber does is that it feeds your gut microbiome. Who's heard of the gut microbiome? Very good, awesome. So these are all of the bacteria, the fungi, viruses, everything that lives in our intestines. Believe it or not, they outnumber us, our human cells. They outnumber our human cells by a factor of 10. We are made up more of all of the bugs in our intestines than of human cells. So we want to keep them happy. The way that we keep them happy is through prebiotics. Guess where we get prebiotics? Fiber, very good. Okay, so that is how we foster, that is how we sustain, that is how we support the symbiotic beneficial bacteria that live in our gut. You're going to be seeing so many studies coming out about this. This is a very hot topic. And like I said before, it affects not just our heart, it affects not just our development of diabetes, but it affects our mood. So whenever we feed our good gut bacteria, we are less likely to be depressed and anxious. There's so much more research coming on that. So let's test. Pop quiz. Go to your phone and tell me which category of food, fruits, vegetables, eggs, or beans has the highest fiber content. Which one do you think it is? Y'all are so good. Everybody's been studying in this group. The answer is beans. And I'm very proud of y'all. Nobody has chosen eggs because nothing that comes from an animal has fiber. So unfortunately, your meat, your dairy, your eggs, none of that has fiber. Fiber only comes from plant foods. And the good news is all whole plant foods have fiber. It just happens that beans have the biggest bang for your buck. So on average, beans, one serving of beans is about half a cup of beans, 7 grams of fiber on average. So I am what you would call a bean pusher. So this is your public service announcement to eat more beans, okay? I mean, doesn't that just look delicious and very appealing? Okay, second reason, nutrient density. Your antioxidants, phytonutrients, vitamins, and minerals are packed into whole plant foods. They are exploding with these vibrant and powerful nutrients. You're only getting them from whole plant foods. And these nutrients are decreasing our risk, not just of chronic diseases, like I said before, your heart disease, your diabetes, your dementia, but it's also decreasing your risk of acute disease, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. So let's test our knowledge on this one. Which food category has the greatest antioxidant concentration? Is it beans, leafy greens, berries, or herbs and spices? What do y'all think? I'll just tell you that this one stocks up. So the correct answer is actually herbs and spices. But don't worry, don't worry. All of them are packed with antioxidant. Herbs and spices just happen to give you your biggest bang for your buck, but it makes sense, right? Because it's kind of concentrated down. So that's why we want to get our turmeric and our cinnamon and all our spices in there. It's really good to cook with all those things. But the important thing is to eat a diversity and abundance, a variety of whole plant foods. We're not just going to be eating herbs and spices, but I just like to throw this question in there because it shakes up. See how beautiful that is. Okay, so there is nutrients in all whole plant foods. Like I said, they all have these beautiful phytonutrients, antioxidants. They also have macronutrients. Our macronutrients are the ones we need in bigger amounts. You probably have heard of something called protein, carbohydrates, fats. So let me ask you a question about that because this comes up a lot, okay? Which food category does not contain protein? Does not contain protein? Fruit, vegetables, whole grains, mushrooms, or none of the above? Which one does not contain protein? All right, so yes, that was a trick question because all whole plant foods contain protein. They all contain protein, fat, and carbohydrates, but in varying percentages. Okay, so you don't have to worry. As long as you're eating a good variety of plants, you don't have to worry about your protein intake. So like I've been saying this whole time, eating more whole plant foods gets you so many benefits in prevention. It's going to prevent or decrease your risk of, of course, nothing is absolute, it's going to decrease your risk of heart disease, diabetes, dementia, even autoimmune disease, cancer, all of these chronic diseases that are the top causes of death in the United States. So prevention is key. But what about reversal? Is it possible? Can a plant-based diet have the potential to reverse heart disease and diabetes? What do you think? Have you heard of this before? Is it possible or is it no way that that's true? You're right, it is possible. And in fact, a plant-based diet has been found one of the only ways in a diet form to reverse heart disease. And it has happened. It happens a lot of times. I'm also a health coach, so I help people with this. So I want you to know that you have the power, you are empowered to take your health in your own hands and do what you can, not only to prevent, but potentially reverse some of these chronic conditions. Happy people walking. But there's more, like I alluded to before. How about acute illnesses? So your colds and your flus and things like that. We are in the midst of a global pandemic, which has completely changed our way of life. This is a recent study that was done surveying health professionals in 6 different countries. The results were shocking. They found that those that ate a plant-based diet, which the participants of the study weren't even 100% plant-based, they did have some animal products. They were able to decrease their risk of developing moderate to severe COVID by 73%. 73%. And those that followed a pescatarian way of eating decreased their risk of moderate to severe COVID by 59%. It's powerful. It is so powerful. And why is it so powerful? Because one of the hallmarks of COVID is inflammation. So if you're eating a diet that's decreasing your inflammation through fiber and antioxidants, you're helping decrease the risk of eating so much inflammation that it's going to overcome you and it's going to take you out. That's why it works. But don't worry, everybody, because I see a lot of worried looks on your faces. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. I'm not trying to convert you to vegans today, okay? But I do want you to eat like a centenarian. You've probably heard me talk about the blue zones. If you've heard me talk before, places around the world where people are living to the 90s and 100s. They're productive, they're happy, they're able to live their lives the way that they want to. These people have healthy habits, not just in their diet, but with their diets, they're eating a predominantly plant-based diet. They don't consider themselves vegans, but they're eating mostly whole plant foods. Usually 90% of what they're eating is plants. And they're using animal products as condiments and for celebratory reasons. They're not eating it all the time. So this is just an example of how this can be applied in a real life scenario to help you live a long, healthy, joyful, and productive life. But besides that, eating plants is about abundance and not deprivation. Because when I talk about eating plants, sometimes automatically people think, well, I'm gonna miss my meat, I'm gonna miss my egg, I'm gonna miss my dairy. But I want you to focus more on not what you're leaving out. I want you to focus on what you're putting in. Because when it comes to plants, there are over 50,000 edible plants, 50,000 edible plants in our world. Beans alone, there's over 400 edible varieties. Potatoes, 4,000 edible varieties. When it comes to animals, we're eating maybe 8. For the adventurous people, maybe 10 different animals. Compare that to 50,000. It's not about deprivation. It's about abundance. Remember, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. So I want to give you some examples as I close for breakfast so that you can start thinking about changing your paradigm, different ways that you might be able to eat. Breakfast, my favorite is oatmeal. Oatmeal with fruit and nuts. Or you can just simply do whole grain toast with nut butter and a side of fruit. Or you can do a veggie and bean scramble, throw in some potatoes, delicious. For lunch, hummus, everybody likes hummus, right? It's like at parties and stuff. So hummus sandwich, veggies, fruit, bean burrito, you can find that almost anywhere. A Buddha bowl, you can make a Buddha bowl anything you want. Grains, beans, greens, a delicious sauce, and you're set. Dinner, tofu and veggie stir fry. That's what we had last night. I had 10 different veggies in my stir fry last night. Think about my gut microbiome. Super happy. They are very, very happy. Pasta primavera, which is basically pasta with red sauce, lots of veggies, and a veggie burger with roasted potatoes. If you have an air fryer, you can make air fried potatoes instead of the fried potatoes. Delicious. And you don't have to go hungry, eat when you're hungry. So that's why I included some snack options here. Of course, fresh fruits always available. Veggies with hummus, there's the hummus again. Roasted chickpeas, it is my favorite beef, so it comes up a lot. So I want you to think about this now. How can you integrate more fruits, vegetables, whole grain beans, and nuts and seeds into your meals and snacks starting today? You don't have to start tomorrow. You can start this very day. And I want to know, as we finish here, now that you know this information, are you going to make an effort to eat more whole plant foods? Maybe you might consider going plant-based for a while, like some of the people in this room. Or is your diet perfect, so you're not going to make any changes? I love it. Hey, that's a good start, everybody. When you're ready to go fully plant-based, come see me. There's a few perfect people. Might be the motorcycle riding people too. So, okay. So for those of you that are now plant curious, I have lots of free resources at dryami.com/free. So many guides there, free PDFs you can share with your friends and family. I also have my podcast, Veggie Doctor Radio. It's available on all the podcast players. It's my 4th year now and have almost 200 episodes. So there's something for everybody, all kinds of topics there. And my book, A Parent's Guide to Intuitive Eating, How to Raise Kids Who Love to Eat Healthy. It's available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook, which I narrated myself. And you can follow me at @DrYami on Instagram, Facebook, Clubhouse. And I would love to take any questions, but I might have gone over time, so I think I spoke slowly. Do I have time or no? Okay, thank you everybody so much. I really enjoyed it.
First, we did have time for questions. That was really, really fascinating. I was going to end up the thing just to make sure that, but I'm not sure it's safe to say this anymore. But we are also on the anniversary of the greatest apple pie ever made in the world, which was made in October of 1927. And just, Yummy, I think you'd appreciate that it has at least some of the things you want. It has 400 gallons of apples and 2.5 pounds of cinnamon. But you probably won't like the fact that it also had 100 pounds of sugar and a barrel of flour. Minor technicalities. But, and it was served to the school children, you'll be happy to know, when it was finished in October of 1927. Next week, we'll be meeting with, our meeting will be also here, and our speaker will be Oklahoma and all its people. Ami, in honor of your Teachers Day, we're giving a book to the community centers each week, having something to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. This one is a long walk to water. It will be given your name to one of the centers. So with that, I believe we are adjourned, and I appreciate you all coming. We'll see you next week, except for those of you who are going to be out collecting food on Saturday. Somewhere. See you guys. Yeah.